And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC basketball podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be talking about some realistic and dream offseason targets for some teams. Now, this is a list that comes from Bleacher Report, and I'm just going to give my opinions on, the people on this list and where I think they could end up in this off season, as well as, if it's a dream, if it's reality, this, that, and the other. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull up the list right now. Let me see if I can do it. No, that's the wrong one. There we go. That's much better. All right. So we have this slideshow. So the first star that I'm going to bring up is Trae Young. So obviously Trae Young, he was in. Oh, wait a second. The text is you guys can't see it on the audio side, but the text is looks a little bit weird on the display title there. There we go. Just adjusted that. So Trae Young, obviously Trae Young has been involved in several trade talks, and there's growing questions on, what team he's going to end up on. People are saying he could end up on the Spurs, the Lakers, and obviously, like, everyone is, whenever the Lakers need a star, it's like every single star is up for grabs for LA. It's kind of ridiculous, but honestly, Trae Young does seem to be a realistic option for the Lakers. I mean, they do have the pieces that they can trade away to get him, and it wouldn't be a bad fit to have Trae Young on the same team as LeBron and Anthony Davis. And that is the more realistic option. Now, the fantasy option would be Donovan Mitchell, because Donovan Mitchell, like, he's asking for a lot of money. He's going to ask for a huge contract, a huge supermax deal, and needing to pay both LeBron and Anthony Davis on top of needing to pay 200 million for Donovan Mitchell, it seems a little bit unrealistic to me. So, I personally do not think that the Lakers have a single chance of landing Donovan, and, like, I think it's just all dreams, smoke and mirrors at this point, because this is usually what the Lakers do in the off season. They hype up they either hype up the fact that they can get a specific free agent. They did that with Kyrie Irving, they did that with Kawhi Leonard, they did that with Paul George. They did that with so many stars in the past, and they all eventually end up not being true. Like, you'll see everywhere on the internet just fantasy jersey swaps where it's just random star players in a Lakers jersey, and it's just like, ooh, we could possibly get this guy. Ooh, we could possibly get this guy. Oh, maybe we can get this guy. And not only that, Twitter is also loaded with people that make fantasy trades that they think would work and they think GMs would accept, when in reality it's just an egregious trade and definitely would not work. So that's one. So Trae Young is one star whom I believe is going to probably leave, and that's a realistic option for the Cavs. Now, for the Golden State Warriors, now their dream option is, you guessed it, Mr. Kevin Durant, the Snake, the one and only, the man that ruined my Brooklyn Nets and stepped on the 3-point line when he was taking that shot over PJ Tucker in Game 7. Where do I even begin with Kevin Durant? I mean, the realistic option for the Golden State Warriors in free agency is honestly Alec Burks. Like, he's a player, he's a forward from the Knicks. He's a very good scorer, in my opinion, like, for the position that he plays and, like, for the role that he has on the Knicks. He's a very consistent scorer, and he would be a very valuable option for the Golden State Warriors to have. But obviously, as a dream, you would rather have Kevin Durant back on your roster, and because obviously Kevin Durant won his only 2 championships with the Golden State Warriors when he was one of their options on a ridiculously stacked team. And this is, it's called a dream scenario, but honestly I call it a nightmare scenario, because if this happens again, I swear, if this happens again, where Kevin Durant just decides to go back to Golden State, I am going to be so absolutely livid, because it's like, please win a championship without those guys. You cannot be that guy when you're playing with those guys. That's just not how it works. And his career in the postseason, if you take away his time with Golden State, it's extremely disappointing. Extremely disappointing. I mean, even like we'll start with OKC. Like he lost in the finals to LeBron James, and I mean he was a young player, so I mean it makes sense how they lose. Then as he matures, he blows a 3-1 lead to the Golden State Warriors when he had it like in the bag. Then he decides to join that Warriors team, wins his championships. Then he decides to leave in hopes of winning a real championship, only to join another super team in the Brooklyn Nets with, James Harden and Kyrie Irving. Doesn't make it, only makes it to the second round. Then in the next year, when it was just him and Kyrie, they get swept by the Boston Celtics in the first round after having a horrible game 2. Then when the going got tough, he decided to leave the Brooklyn Nets and join the Phoenix Suns, where they then lose in Game 6 at home to the Denver Nuggets, the eventual champions, in embarrassing fashion. And then this year, where they lose to the Timberwolves and they get swept. Like, it's been disappointing for Kevin Durant. Everything has not gone his way whatsoever. And honestly, I say this is karma. This is just karma. Like, this is what happens when you essentially sell your soul for the rings. Because that's what he did. Like, in my eyes, that's exactly what he did. He sold his soul for those championships. But aside from that, let's move on to the next free agent, which is Paul George. So there's a possibility that he could join the Sixers. I think that's a very likely possibility. The Sixers, they have enough cap space. They do have the ability to offer a max to Paul George if the Clippers do not offer it to him. Now, another landing spot a dream landing spot would be OKC. I'm sure a lot of Oklahoma City Thunder fans would love to have Paul George back on the roster. He had one of his best seasons with the Thunder. He was I believe he was third in MVP voting when he was on the Thunder at one point. And again, he was a very, very valuable player for the team, despite the fact that he was only able to make it as far as the first round. But a more realistic option for the Thunder would be Isaiah Hartenstein from the Knicks. It seems like everybody wants to just steal all the Knicks players from me. But aside from that, Isaiah Hartenstein would be a very good option for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And it's a much more realistic option because that would be a lot of money that you have to give to Paul George. And I don't really think they're willing to give up that much money for Paul George. Now, next player on the list is DeMar DeRozan. Now, I talked about DeMar in the previous segment, how he was a little bit bitter with the Raptors and trading him, and I do feel bad for him. Excuse me, in that sense, but now a realistic spot, a dream spot for him would probably be the Clippers. I mean, DeMar on the Bulls, it's been a little bit underwhelming. Like, they haven't really done much. They've just been mid. And it's nowhere near the same success that he was able to achieve on Toronto. And if Paul George decides to leave in free agency and go to and decide to go to a different team, I feel like the Clippers would be a dream spot for him. He is from Los Angeles, and he obviously I don't think he would mind playing in his own city, which would be a very nice change of pace for him. But a much more realistic option for the Clippers would be Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield, he's on the Sixers, and I wouldn't be surprised, if Paul George decides to go to the Sixers, that the Clippers decide to acquire Buddy Hield in not a replacement role, but as someone that comes off the bench and can shoot the three ball very, very consistently. And that's really all I have. I'm not entirely sure the situation with the Chicago Bulls. There's barely any kind of coverage on the Bulls as it is, let alone how DeMar DeRozan feels being on the Bulls and everyone else's opinion of the Bulls, and whether or not they're going to run it back again and again and again. Now, the next star is going to surprise you. LeBron James. So, LeBron, a dream selection, a team that would dream of having him would be the 76ers. I mean, there was when LeBron in 2018, when he was going on that ridiculous postseason run and he ended up going into free agency, a lot of people were questioning exactly where he wanted to go in that free agency. And nobody would have really expected them to be the. No one expected him to join the Lakers. I mean, there was a lot of optimism that he would join the Lakers, but nobody really thought about that, if that makes sense. And a lot of people thought he was going to join the Sixers because the Sixers had looked like they had a much better young core and a much brighter future than the Lakers did with the squad that they had. And obviously, like, if the Sixers get LeBron, this is a dream scenario. Like, I don't see this happening whatsoever. They have a much better chance of getting Paul George than they do getting LeBron. Like, that is a much more realistic option. The Sixers seeking Paul George. Like, that's my thoughts on that. So, next on the list is honestly quite obvious. And hold on just one second. I'm just pulling up the list again, which will be Darius Garland. Now, obviously, we know that the Cavs and their drama, it's reached a very high peak right now. And it's come to the point where Darius Garland is like, you either choose between Donovan Mitchell or you choose between me. And obviously, if you're the Cleveland Cavaliers, you're going to choose Donovan Mitchell. So the way I see it, there's the one spot that would be really good for him, and is honestly and it is a dream scenario that I'm talking about, is the Pelicans. I don't know if the Pelicans will have the money that they need to be able to pay Darius Garland the contract that he wants. But him being on the Pelicans, I feel like that would open up a lot for CJ. That would be a very good pairing to have a young guard to be paired up with, Brandon Ingram, Zion, and CJ McCollum, especially when he's not the same scorer that I thought he was going to be, or he's not I thought he was going to be like a 21, 22 point per game scorer, but in reality, he wasn't. And I know he was only a few points off of that 20 point per game average, but I'm being generous when I say 22. I really, at the beginning, I thought 25 points per game, along with, maybe 7 or 6 assists. Again, just being generous, but I expected a lot more from Garland. And the fact that he was a little bit underwhelming, I don't see him as like a number 2 option. So I feel like a team like the Pelicans, where they have several options, would best suit him. But a more realistic target for the Pelicans would most likely be Malik Monk. And Malik Monk, he's the sixth man, and obviously he is a sixth man, and he's a very, very good option as the sixth man. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up getting into the starting lineup with Actually, no. I feel like he'll be a much better option for the Pelicans coming off of the bench. Like, because he's had much better experience coming off the bench. He's also a much better, just a much better player coming off of the bench. So that's all I have for this fourth segment and the dream scenarios. So with that, we will go ahead and go into the fifth segment, where I talk about what Draymond Green and Shaq had to say on the podcast about their respective championship teams. So I will be right back after this short break.